We're going to go from the Fairhaven to this. Same pattern, just 5 easy pattern changes next. Hello everyone, I am Chris and this is Simply Classic. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, a special welcome to you, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much. If you have not subscribed yet, please consider doing so. I really would appreciate that you do. So we are going to do some pattern changes, and we are going to go from the Fairhaven pattern to this Michael Kors inspired bag. I saw this on the Facebook group, and here is a copy or a picture of the inspiration piece. So it is the pattern itself is made in the same way that the Fairhaven is made. I wanted to go ahead and do it in similar colors, and this is actually my personal bag that I'm using right now. Okay. The only difference is that the Michael Kors bag actually has a working pocket on the back here, and that would have made for a lot more pattern changes, so I left that out, and this is just a faux pocket. Okay, basically this is just a seam back here. But other than that, we added this zipper placket in addition to everything else you're seeing. And I went ahead and used linen for my lining, because I just love linen in my personal bags. Linen is such a crisp finish. I put a zipper pocket on one side, I put some slip pockets on the other side, and it is just fabulous. So the bag we're going to be making today is this one here. The Michael Kors bag has a 5.5 inch drop here, 5.5 inch handle drop. So it really should be used as more of a arm bag, I guess is what you call it. It does have a shoulder strap. Now the shoulder strap on the Michael Kors bag says that it goes from 18 to 20 inches. I actually made mine longer because I felt like if it was going to be a shoulder bag, it needed to be able to get on my shoulder comfortably. Okay. In this bag here, I also used linen from my lining, and this is the linen that I sell on my website. I used the kind of silver blue color in this one. And see how nice and crisp that is? Linen really does provide for a nice crisp lining. So this video is going to be a little bit different than the videos I've done in the past. I'm not going to show you how to sew each step because I've already done that in the Fairhaven video. I went ahead and linked the Fairhaven video below so that you can watch that for any refreshers you need. What I am going to do is I'm going to be at the cutting table, and I'm going to show you exactly how to make all of the pattern changes step by step, and then I'm going to kind of bring you through the sewing process for the main exterior of the bag. The lining is really not a whole lot different except for this zipper placket, and I will take you step by step through that, and then of course putting it all together with all of these wonderful details. Now I recently ordered these extra large, you call them like a Chicago screw concho type decorative pieces, because I'm working on a pattern, a Brahmin pattern that's actually going to feature that. But this bag is like perfect for it, because on the original inspiration piece there's a Michael Kors signature piece on there, which of course we can't replicate, but this is a really great alternative. So I went ahead and linked these below as well. Visit my website to get some linen and also to get these extra large conchos. And there's a couple other designs besides this one here. Okay, so thank you to, I can't remember who posted it. I'll find out. Thank you so much. I love the fact that y'all are posting these bags in the Facebook group. It really keeps me inspired and keeps me going. So if you've put a bag on there, I haven't gotten to it yet, don't worry, I have a great big notebook full of them. I just skipped ahead to this one because I didn't have to recreate the wheel. This is the Fairhaven, y'all. This is it, okay? So let's get going. Okay, let's start out by looking at the pattern changes. So you want to go ahead and print all of the Fairhaven pieces. We are going to take the stabilizer pieces for both the side, the front, and the back, and also the lining pieces, and we're just going to set those aside. We're not going to use those. Okay. We're also not going to use the top side accent panel piece or the stabilizer for it. So I am just going to put those aside as well. Now, whenever I do pattern changes, I always have an old blade in my cutter. You're going to need some tape, some scrap pieces of paper, a ruler, and some kind of marking pencil or pen. Okay, I have the 3 pieces we're going to use here all cut out and ready to go. And we're going to start with our side panel piece. So the first thing we want to do is, you can see that there is an angle here. Okay, this is not a straight up and down. You've got an angle on this side, and then on the front you have an angle going in. So we want to make these straight. So you're just going to line up your ruler with the very bottom here, and you're going to go straight up and you're going to cut it off. And you're going to do that to both sides. So there's one, and let's cut off this side. Now don't throw these away yet. We're gonna need that. So just put that aside for just a minute. Then you want to, somewhere in the center of this piece, you want to cut it in half. Now it doesn't have to be exactly in the center. We just want to preserve our little cutouts here. So I'm just going to kind of line this up on my mat and line it up with one of the lines and just cut. Okay, so now we have 2 pieces. Take some of your scrap pieces of paper and tape it to one of these sides. I'm not going to worry about filling in here, but you certainly could. So now we want to add 1 inch to this piece. So I'm going to take my 1 inch ruler and I'm going to match it up with the cut over here. And I'm going to take this other piece and butt it right up, making sure my tops are even. I'm going to tape it down, and now we've added 1 inch to the gusset. Okay, and then you can just cut off the rest of your paper here. Okay, so there's our changed side piece. So that's pattern change number 1. Okay, so now take your upper lining piece, and all we want to do is cut off this curve. Just going to line that up, cut it off, and you can get rid of this piece. So that's our new upper lining piece. Easy, right? So that's pattern change number 2. Okay, now for pattern change number 3, we're going to take one of our triangles that we cut off of our side, and we're just going to line it up. I'm going to put the top of the pattern piece along one of my lines on my grid, and I'm going to take this piece over here and line it up with the top of the grid as well. And you may have to, there you go, you might have to play with it. Make sure you have a straight line there. Okay, we're going to tape this down. And you're going to have this little piece up here that doesn't have a piece of paper. You can certainly add a piece of paper if you'd like. Oops, I just moved it. Let me make sure it's not going to move on me here. So all we're doing is taking the angle off of the side and adding it back to the front so we can get back to a square piece for the front and the back. Okay. The next thing we need to do is add 1 inch of height to this side piece, or front piece. So I'm just going to take some scrap piece of paper again. I'm going to tape it to the bottom. I'm going to take my 1 inch ruler, line it up with the bottom edge. Go ahead and cut this off. Line it up with this side here. Now we do want this side to be straight. No, not exactly straight, so let me move this down a little bit. And to overlap it just a little bit. Let me cut this off here. And use your lines on your grid here to help. There we go. Now, if you don't want to use this piece, you could certainly just take another piece of paper, line it up, and make it nice and straight. This line here just needs to be good. Take away the angle. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just add a piece up here so that I can square this off. Okay, so I want to come straight across the top. And straight up the side. Okay. Okay, the last change that we need to make is we need to take our front panel and we're going to cut 3 3/4 inches off the top. So 1, 2, 3 3/4 of an inch. And we're going to do the same thing with our side piece. So 3 3/4. And essentially these should be the same, and they will be. Okay. So now we have these 2 pieces for our side. We have 2 pieces for front and back. We have our lining, our top lining piece. For the bottom, instead of cutting what the pattern says, you're going to cut a piece that's 12 3/4 of an inch by 6.5 inches. And then I'm going to give you all a little cutting chart for the extra little pieces that you have to cut for strap connectors and that fancy V shape in the front. So I'm going to go cut everything out, and I'm going to show you exactly how we're going to measure for our stabilizer. Okay, all of my exterior pieces are cut. I want to remind you about one thing. We took this pattern piece that you have to place on the fold and we cut 3.75 inches off the top. Don't forget when you go to cut this that this needs to be on the fold as well. So you might even want to write on there so you don't forget, because I forgot and I cut these little pieces and I had to go back and recut my top pieces here. Okay? So once you have everything cut, and this here is going to be my bottom. What you want to do is, the easiest way to cut for your Decorative light, and of course the bottom's going to get a piece of Decorative heavy, is to go ahead and mark your lines. This is going to be a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around, and you really want to make sure that you do not stitch on your Decorative at any point. That's going to make for a nice crisp corner and a nice crisp bag. So a lot of times, even if I'm not having to measure for stabilizer, I still go ahead and do this step because I want to make really sure that when I put my stabilizer down, I'm not going to be within this seam allowance at all. Okay? So now that I have all my lines drawn, I can just go ahead and measure and figure out exactly how big this stabilizer needs to be for each piece. Now I'm going to tell you to cut it a little bit less, because when you place that in here, you want to be able to see all of your lines. So I usually cut it about, oh, maybe 1/8 of an inch less all the way around, which means about 1/4 of an inch. So for instance, in this case, this is showing to be about 5.5 inches on my stabilizer. I'm going to probably cut it about 5.25 inches. This here is 11 3/4, so I'm going to cut it about 11.5, and then I'm going to center it here in the middle. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to mark all of the back side of all my pieces and figure out exactly what I need for stabilizer, and cut my stabilizer and then fuse it to the wrong side. You're going to put on all your main pieces, you're going to put Decorative light. Except for the bottom, you want to put Decorative heavy. All of the straps, which I gave you cutting chart for that, all of these strap pieces are, of course you don't want to put any kind of stabilizer or anything in those. Okay? Okay, I have all my strap connectors and straps here. I marked everything down the center and put double-sided tape, as you can see, down the center of all of these. So we're going to, just like you do for any other strap or strap connector, go ahead and fold the edges into the center. Now when you fold these edges in, make sure you're not pulling on the side as you're folding, okay? You just want to fold it up to the center just like this, without running your finger across or doing anything to stretch this fabric. A lot of times the twisting of handles and straps begins at the table. And the reason why handles and straps twist is because of the way we fold the fabric. We either are, without even realizing it, pulling on it or folding it crooked. So just kind of pay special attention to that. I mean, you can lightly, go over this to make sure your tape is sticking okay. But when you get to the edge of your fabric should line up, on both sides. Okay? So I'm going to go through and I'm going to roll all of these to the center. And if you notice over here on these handles, the drop on the Michael Kors bag is a 5.5 inch drop on the handles. Then there's an adjustable shoulder strap. It's not a crossbody strap, it's a shoulder strap, and it's only, let's see, I think it's only like 19 inches. Let me see what it says. The adjustable strap is 18 to 20 inches. So I cut my shoulder strap, and this is in the cutting chart that I gave you. I cut it, right at about 37 inches, and I cut my handles 15. Now you're going to see on these handles, I went ahead and cut some off of the sides here, because I'm going to do one of those faux rolled handles like we did for the Roseanne. So go back, I'm going to link the Roseanne tutorial down below so you can look and see exactly how we did that rolled handle, but that's how I'm going to do the rolled handle for both of these. So once I'm through with all of this, I'll show you exactly what we need to stitch and what we don't need to stitch yet. You want to go stitch your side strap connector down both sides. You want to stitch your adjustable handle strap down both sides, your 2 faux rolled handles, your 2 decorative pieces, this is what's going to make that V in the front, and your 4 strap connectors. Do not stitch those, just put those aside for right now, okay? We don't want to stitch those yet. Okay, all of my straps are done. I'm going to go ahead and stick these aside for just a second and take my side pieces. I want to take 2 D-rings, and the piece that we cut for the side strap, I'm just going to cut that in half. I'm going to put a D-ring on each one. Just like this. I'm going to mark the center of my side piece. I'm going to mark the center of each of these short ends. Well, it's the long end, but it's on the short piece, the top piece. Okay. So go ahead and line up your connector with the center here, and you want to overlap about 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to use my ruler here. See where 1/2 inch is. Make sure I'm lined up. Do the same thing on this one. And I'm just going to go baste these both in place. So now that they're both basted in place, I'm just going to center this right on top. We're going to stitch it on, and then I'm going to open this up and flip the connector to the bottom and top stitch. I'm then going to add a rivet right here about 1/2 inch down and centered on each one. And we have our 2 side pieces done. So let's set these aside and grab our front and back pieces. I'm going to mark the centers. Okay. We also want to find the center of our top pieces. And we're going to center these pieces on the top. We're going to stitch it at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then we're going to open this up. we're going to flip the seam down and top stitch. So basically what you want is you want the top stitch to be in the same place as it is on your side piece. Okay, so once I stitch and open this up, I'm going to make sure the seam allowance goes down, and then I'm going to top stitch on top. Okay, now that I have that done, I want to take my ruler and I'm going to line it up with the center on the 2-inch mark on my ruler and draw a line down this side, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. That didn't show up very good. Let me try that again. Okay, the bad thing about doing rolled handles like this is that at this point we're putting the handles on the bag, and now I have handles to contend with. So just keep that in mind. If you don't want to do that, if you'd rather add your handles at the end, you probably don't want to do one of these rolled edge straps. Okay, so we're going to take one of our handles, we're going to take 2 of our strap connectors, and on the short side of our strap connector, we want to measure I'm going to measure 2 inches. And that's where our rectangle ring is going to go. So take some double-sided tape. I'm going to put it down the center and keep it about 1 inch away from your mark. You want to get your rectangle ring, whether it's attached to a handle or not. And we're going to stick it on here and fold this down. Just like that. Go ahead and line the bottom up with the bottom, and we're putting it to the outsides of these lines. Okay, and I am going to just cover up that mark. Just like that. And make sure your handle's not twisted. Stick this side on. Go ahead and place the ring right on that mark. Fold this down. And then put it to the right side of this line, lining up my bottom edges. Make sure your handles are even. Mine look off, so I'm going to adjust a little bit. It's always better to fix before, right? A lot of times you can measure, but your eye is almost better at seeing these things. And I've also heard that if you take a picture of something, you can see problems with it better in the picture. That is true, because a lot of times I'll have a bag and I'll be like, oh, this is so nice. And I take a picture of it and I go, oh my gosh, this is not so nice. And I end up having to make a few adjustments before I send the picture along the way. This is still, not sure what the problem is tonight. Maybe my eyes are tired. I don't know. This is not working. All right, y'all, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it. I think this needs to come down just a hair more. And see, sometimes you can be too picky. This is probably one of those things that is probably okay to everybody else, but for some reason it's driving me crazy tonight. I'm sure you have those situations as well. Okay, that looks good. I want to make sure my edges are in real well on the side here. You can even overlap them a little bit at the edge here, just to make sure that they're not poking out when you fold this back. And a lot of times as I sew, I actually take my stiletto and just kind of poke the edges in just to make sure they're not sticking out. Okay, so from here, I'm going to go to my machine and I'm going to stitch up, across, and down. I am going to measure 1 inch down from the ring and make a mark, and that's where I'm going to turn on each one. And then halfway between that mark and the ring, I'm going to put another rivet. So basically a 1/2 inch. So measure 1 inch down, make a line. And then I'll put my rivet here and here. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch this on. I'm going to do the same thing for the other side, then we'll come back. Okay, I have that completed, and this is a really good spot to put your tag. If you have a tag, you know, just pick which side you like better than the other, and that will be your front. Go ahead and put your tag on. Okay, from here you want to grab your bottom. And we're basically just going to do the rest of the construction just like the Fairhaven. So I'm going to find the center of my bottom. Before I sew my bottom on, I am going to go ahead and mark where I'm going to put my feet, but I'm going to wait to sew them on or put them on until I'm done with the sewing the bottom on. So I'm just going to measure 2 inches in from each side. Put a little dot. And I'm measuring 2 inches from the center, or from the edge of the bag, not the Decorative. All right, I usually like to make sure everything is aligned here, that I didn't go awry, like I tend to do. All right, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to clip this on. I'm going to sew it with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then I want to flip the seam allowance towards the bottom of the bag and top stitch. Okay? I'm going to do the same thing with this piece. Sew it on, put the seam allowance towards the bottom of the bag, and then top stitch. Okay, so I have that done. And I wanted to show you, here on the sides, I'm off a little bit. You can see my side, my front and my back pieces look to be a little bit bigger. What I like to do is when I get to this point and see that, I actually trim it off. And I think the more you keep things square, the better product you're going to have at the end. So I'm just going to kind of move this way, line all of this up, make sure it's nice and even, and then just go ahead and trim this off. So a lot of times when we're, and I mean, I'm not really taking a lot off, but a lot of times when we're altering patterns, little things like that happen. Not a big deal. Just clean it up and it'll be good to go. And that's another reason why it's good to leave a little bit of extra space where your Decorative is, because if you do have to trim it off, you're still going to have enough space to stitch without stitching on top of your Decorative. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put my feet on according to how you put feet on. Just go ahead and punch my little holes and put my feet in. And once I do that, then I'm going to take my side pieces. I'm going to line up my side pieces with the side of the bag. Now you're lining up, of course, the edge that has the little squares out. And you're going to stitch basically from the edge of the square to the edge of the square. Okay, from the inside of the square to the inside of the square. You want to stitch both sides on. And then I'll show you how to pull the bag up together. Okay, so here's what we have. Our two sides are sewn on. What you need to do is right where the edge is here, okay, so right where you're, right along this edge, you want to go ahead and clip to this upper edge. So basically you're clipping in a 1/2 inch right there, okay? You do the same thing on all sides. Just like that. Turn it around. Okay. I'm also, before I do anything else, I'm going to go ahead and trim back this side seam allowance. This is just going to make it easier to sew your sides. So I'm trimming it back to about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so from here, you just want to go ahead and you're going to, your sides should easily fold in. Okay, I'm going to put a clip here. And then the next spot I want to clip is right at this seam. I want to make sure these seams match. And then my top should match. And then the rest of this should all fall in place. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I want to go ahead and fold this in. Make sure these match. And my top should match. Okay. So now, because you clipped these edges, when you sew, you're going to be able to sew, and I showed you this in the Fairhaven video, but you're actually going to be able to sew right off the edge. Okay, so you're going to have it in your machine like this. You're going to be stitching down, and you're going to be able to just stitch right off the edge. On this side, you're going to stick it in the machine, right, like this. You're going to be able to start right on the edge and then just come right on up. Okay, So I'm going to clip my other side, and then I'm going to go to the machine and sew these together. And then we will be able to turn our bag. See what it looks like. Okay, before we turn it, we need to get rid of some of the bulk in a few areas. Now, I don't know if you can see here, I stitched over my Decorative, so that's going to be kind of a hard corner there for me. And over here I did too. So even though I tried to keep it, my Decorative, smaller, I still in a couple places did. So anyway, that's just going to be something I'm going to have to contend with. I am going to trim down my seam allowances. I'm going to trim them to about 1/4 of an inch. And then one more here. And then the other place that you have some bulk is at the bottom where your strap connectors come in. So right here. So I'm actually going to trim out these strap connectors. You know, it's not like they're holding a bunch of weight, and if you cut it out here close to the seam, it's not going to be a problem. So I'm just going to do a couple little clips, and that'll just help this sit a lot better. I actually did not back stitch when I sewed these on down here at the bottom for that reason, because I knew I was going to come back and clip them off. Okay, and that just really reduces the bulk there, even just taking, you know, just this little bit out. Got some tape in there too. So let's turn it around. All right, so this is what we have so far. Now we're going to work on the lining, and I'm not going to bring you through every single step on the lining. Go ahead and put your pockets, whatever kind of pockets you want in. We are going to have to do a drop-in lining on this, so you don't necessarily need a zipper pocket. I'm going to put one in mine just because a lot of people like to have a zipper pocket. And get through with all of the pockets, but don't sew your tops on yet because we still need to do our zipper placket. Okay, I have my lining pocket pieces done. And you're going to do this exactly the same way you do the pockets in your Fairhaven. The only thing I want to caution you about is you need to go ahead and cut 2.5-inch squares from the bottom of each corner. Go ahead and do that before you cut your pocket pieces, because the Fairhaven is a very tall bag. This is going to be a shorter bag, so your pockets are not going to be able to be quite as long. I decided to do a slip pocket on one side and a zipper pocket on the other side. I typically will also, in most of my bags, put another slip pocket here, but there's just not enough room because by the time we fold this up, it's just not going to work. So just pay attention to that and cut these squares out before you cut your pocket pieces. Now the Fairhaven does not have a zipper on top. Instead, it has a snap. This bag does have a zipper, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how I do that. You're going to start off with, I have zipper by the yard here, and this is a piece that's 18 inches. I'm just going to, about 1 inch from the edge, draw a line, a straight line here, on the zipper itself. Then what I'm going to do is pull this apart, and you can see the line there. I'm going to pull this apart, and on the line, I'm just going to pinch, and then I'm going to fold it up so it forms a little right angle, just like that. Okay, I'm going to put a little pin in there to hold it. Okay, and the reason why I draw a line is because I know exactly where to pinch on the other side and fold up. And now I'm exactly at the same length here. So what I'm going to do is just go over to my machine and baste these little edges down so that I can take my pins out. Okay, here's what it looks like when it's basted. Okay, so I love using 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape when I put zippers on, because then I don't have to clip it and the zipper does not move on me. So I'm going to take my zipper placket pieces. I'm going to take a right side and a wrong side. And the first thing I'm going to do is start with 1/2 inch double-sided tape on both ends. Actually, we're going to line them all up. We'll do them all at the same time. Now the reason why I use 1/2 inch here is because I will know exactly how much to fold it up without measuring. All right, then I'm just going to cut these apart. Okay, I'm going to take one of my main pieces here. Well, get this off. And I'm going to fold over both sides, the 1/2 inch. I'm going to take one of my lining pieces and I'm going to fold over just one of the sides, a 1/2 inch. Then I'm going to put this 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape down one side here of each of these pieces. Now when I go to put it on my lining piece, I'm not going to put it quite all the way to the end because I know I'm going to be folding this about a 1/2 inch. Okay. You're going to take your zipper and you're going to line up the edge of the zipper with the edge of your main piece here. Now, when you do this, you don't really want the zipper teeth to be on top of this fold. You've got some bulk right here. So put your zipper teeth just to the edge of that. You can kind of feel it through. You can feel it through the and you see how it's not right there at the edge? I've got it just so that it's just about where the fold ends. And that's just going to really help on the bulk on this corner. So I'm just going to go ahead and lay the rest down. Now when you lay your zipper down, don't pull and lay. What you want to do is just very gently lay it down, because if you do pull, you're going to get a curvy or a wonky zipper, wavy zipper. Okay, so now we're going to take our lining piece. Remember, we still don't have this side folded over yet. I'm going to line up my edges with the edge here and with the edge here. Go ahead and lay it down. And then when I get to this side, I'm going to peel off my tape, or the backing of my tape, and I'm going to be able to see exactly where I need to fold it to line up these edges. So now my edges are perfectly aligned on this side, and they're perfectly aligned on this side. So I'm going to go sew this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then we'll put the other side of the zipper placket on. Okay, so we have the first side sewn on, and you really do want to try to be very precise here, because when you open this up, and this is on the top of your bag, you really do want your zipper to look centered. And if your seam is not straight, when you sew it on this edge, it's not going to look centered when we turn it. So I'm going to take my other main piece, fold over an edge. Before I fold over the second edge here, I do want to make sure that it's lined up with this. So I'm just going to put these two together next to each other, make sure that they are exactly the same. Okay, they look good. So we'll put our tape on here. Now, once I know, because I've done this wrong before, where I've taken these zipper apart and I thought I was doing them the correct way, and I ended up making two sides that were the same. So once I know that I have my other end going on the right side here, I'm going to go ahead and pull these zippers apart, because it's going to be a lot easier to work with. Okay. And then we're just going to lay this zipper down. Again, don't pull. Just lay it down. I'm going to take one end off of our lining. Fold it over. Put our tape on. I get all of my double-sided tape from Waywack. There is a double-sided tape that I get from, an 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape that I get from Amazon, and I like it because it's, now this one's from Waywack, but I like to have both on hand because the ones that I get from Amazon are not as sticky, and they work better in my my Janome machine, my domestic machine. These gum up my, I can't use these double-sided tapes in my domestic machine at all. So I like to have that other on hand as well, and use the less sticky kind when I use my domestic machine. And I do that a lot for linings. My industrial machines do not like these really lightweight fabrics. Okay, so we're going to pull this side off. Make sure we're lined up. And now I'm going to go sew this at a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, just like the other side. Okay, so now that I have them both done, I'm going to go ahead and open these up. fold them back. And if you have a lot of zipper here on the end, you can go ahead and cut it off. And then burn your edges. Let me go get a lighter. I don't know if the zipper would actually come undone all the way to make your bag fall apart, but I don't think it would. But it just makes this a lot neater, if nothing else. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and fold these over. Get everything nice and straight. All your edges should match up perfectly. And I am going to take this to the iron before I sew it and give it just a light press from the lining side, just to try to help all of it lay down a little bit more before I sew it. The other thing I'm going to do that's going to help me when I sew this is I'm going to go ahead and put my zipper pull on temporarily. And when I sew, I'll be able to kind of pull the zipper apart. You know, it's going to be very difficult for me to take this and pull this like this and sew without eating my fingers, with the machine getting my fingers. So I'm just going to add, don't have to be perfectly lined up. Just go ahead and add your zipper pull on here. Just so you have something to hold on to when you iron, or excuse me, when you sew. There we go. Okay. So now when I sew, as I'm sewing this side, I can kind of pull on this, and it will help it all lay a little bit flatter and make it look nice and even. So I'm just going to go hit this with the iron on this side to help this all lay down nice and flat. And then I'm going to take this to the machine. I'm going to start over here, back stitch, come across, top stitch the zipper, come down, and go back up, and then do it on both sides. If you have a walking foot machine, you know, if you've just recently bought a walking foot machine and you're doing this for the first time, I'm going to warn you, in these thicker areas, you're going to need to make yourself a little hump jumper with some extra, you know, maybe some extra faux leather or just a piece of leather or something. And you want to protect your vinyl here because your walking foot will probably eat it. Whenever there's a difference in height, I find my walking foot loves to tear up the vinyl. So it makes for a very sad day when that happens. So just watch it, and if you're in doubt, go ahead and put a piece there to protect it, and then you won't be sorry. So I'm going to go do all that, and then we will come back and put this and on the top of our lining and put all of our lining together. So here's our completed zipper placket. So now I'm going to take the zipper off again, and I'm just going to fold these in half and find the center. Okay, I always start with the side with the zipper because I want to make sure my zippers close in the same direction. So both my pulls are going to be going in this direction. So I'm going to line this up. I'm going to put a couple clips. If you want to baste this first, you can certainly do that before we put your top piece on. I'm just going to go ahead and mark my centers. And I'm going to put this top piece on just like this. And now we're going to stitch this with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then we're going to top stitch. Now when you top stitch, make sure that you fold the zipper placket. A lot of times when we do a bag, we top stitch like this. If you do this, you're not going to be able to get into your pocket. So you want them, and if you look at the original photo, even they have the zipper placket going up. So when you top stitch, you're going to flip your top lining, you're going to flip your zipper, and you're going to top stitch underneath here at your 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm going to go ahead and attach both of these. And then we are close. We're getting there. Okay, I have my lining pieces done here. And as you can see, I put the facing, the zipper facing, or the zipper placket going up towards the top, just like the original bag. Okay, so from here, we're just going to go ahead and clip these together. Make sure that you clip these edges first, as those are the most important ones to match up. The other thing you want to do is when you sew your lining pieces together, you want to go ahead and take a little bit wider seam allowance as you go down your sides here. Okay, so I'm going to start out at the 1/2 inch, and I'm just going to come in to about 5/8, maybe just a hair bigger as I come down. I'm also going to stitch the bottom, and then I'm going to box my corners. Okay, I have my lining completed, and I just want to point out how crisp this lining is. It is just beautiful. I love using linen for linings on higher end bags. Once you put your woven fuse or woven interfacing on it, it presses like, linen presses like a dream anyway, but it retards the wrinkles. So I know I've had some questions about whether the linen wrinkles, and once you get it in your bag and you put that, the interfacing on, and you get it all nice and pressed, that's how it's going to stay. I always use linen for my personal bags whenever I make one, because I just love the look of it and I love the crispness of it. So because we're doing a drop-in lining, I'm going to go ahead and put some double-sided tape here on the edge of both my exterior, right along the edge here, and also of the lining. Once you do that, we're going to go ahead and just fold these edges over right against our Decorative. Okay, you're going to have a nice crisp edge there, because if you measured where your Decorative was supposed to go and you put your Decorative just under that line, then you're going to be able to press that in and get a good 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to do that for both the lining and the main fabric, and then we're going to fit this together, and then the fun starts with starting to add some of the decorative aspects of the bag. Okay, from here we want to go ahead and slip our lining into our bag as it's going to be. So I'm going to put the zipper pocket in the back. And I'm going to go ahead and clip this. Now we're not going to sew it yet, because we still have to cut some holes and do a little bit more, but we want to make sure everything is lined up so we can cut the holes. Okay, that fits perfectly. So I want to measure for these oblong holes that we're going to punch in here. And I'm going to take a Tandy marking pen, and I'm going to measure 3/4 of an inch down from the top and 1 1/4 inches in from the side. So I'm just going to put my ruler here. Let's see, 3/4 and 1 1/4. And that is where I want to start the hole. Right there at that mark. Then I'm going to line up my ruler, and I'm going to draw a line 3/4 of an inch long. This is where I'm going to punch the hole to have my strap come through. So from each seam, I'm going to do that same thing. I'm going to measure 3/4 of an inch down and 1 1/4 of an inch in. Make a little dot. And I'm going to line up my ruler so it's straight. And I'm going to, that's going to be another hole. So I'm going to put 2 holes on each side, 2 holes on the back, 2 holes on the front. Move your clips around as you need to. Okay. So this is the tricky part, because we need to go ahead and cut through both the face fabric, our face of the bag, and the upper lining of the bag, okay? To punch these holes, because you have some height here, especially when you do these side ones, I used some wood to help me. I have these 2 pieces of 2x4 that I just cut and screwed together. And I use these sometimes because, and the reason why I made them is because sometimes I have to put them up this way and put the bag on like this, maybe to put feet on or whatnot, and it just really helps give me that height I need. So what I needed to do this time is to go ahead and set it down, set this board on top, bring it to the edge of my table, and then put the bag on and go ahead and cut these. So I'm going to move my camera so you can see all that. I'm going to use my oblong punch. This is a 3/4 of an inch punch, and these are just the punches that you can get off Amazon. And the reason why we cut our strap 3/4 of an inch is because you can see they fit right in there perfectly, and that's what we want. We want the actual hole to be just a tad bit bigger than the strap so we can go ahead and feed it through. So I'm going to move the camera, and then I'm going to show you how I punched these holes. Okay, so here I am at the edge of my table. I've got my piece of wood down, and I have my board on top. I'm actually going to take my bag. Now make sure that you do not cut through your zipper placket here, okay? So whatever you need to do to make sure that's down, what I did is I just pushed mine down and then just slid this right over like this. Okay, so now I'm going to take the punch and I'm going to set it right over that line. I'm going to take my mallet and I'm going to hit this a couple times here. And then I have my hole. So I'm going to do the same thing 5 more times. Okay. So now that we have our holes, I found in the first bag that I did, they shifted a little bit when I put my band on. So I'm going to put some double-sided tape like around these holes to help hold it in place. It's really going to be difficult to stitch around them, which might be probably an ideal situation, but you're not going to be able to turn to get that done. So I'm hoping that some double-sided tape here is going to work really well. And just place them on both sides of the band. Okay, so see how I've got one there. Put one on the other side. And then I'm just going to peel the backing of the tape off and stick it together. Making sure that I am perfectly aligned. Okay. So I'm just going to repeat that for each one of these holes. Okay, so all of my holes are done. Now, if you would like to edge coat that, you can. Once you get these bands through, you really can't see it, so I'm not going to do that. I think it's going to be fine. You want to start by taking your back band and you're going to put it through the back hole, and then you're going to fold it over about 1 inch. And you can either rivet this on or you can sew it on. I did both in my first bag. I'm actually just going to rivet it this time. I think that the rivet, this band doesn't really have any weight on it. It's just decorative. So the riveting is going to be enough. So what I did was I just put the holes in the band first. Then I'm going to mark where the hole needs to go in the bag. I'm going to open this up and go ahead and punch the hole. So that way I'm just going through the front of the bag. I'm not actually going through the upper lining. Okay, get my rivet in. I'm going to do the same thing with the other band. Okay, I'm going to go set these rivets. So now I'm just going to thread the band through. Come out the front. Do the same thing with this side. Go ahead and thread it through. And come out the front. Okay. So now what you want to do is, in my first bag, kind of pulled this taut. okay, and it kind of squared off the bag. But I think I pulled it too tight. So just be careful how tight you pull it. Essentially, you just want to crisscross these, and we're going to put a hole here on the end, and then I'm going to put a concho through there. Now, you can just do a rivet through here and then go ahead and edge coat your ends. You could, I'm sure y'all can come up with all kinds of neat stuff you can do with this. There's probably a zillion different ideas out there. But I'm going to go ahead and just punch holes here in these end pieces. And then I'm going to overlap them and mark on my bag where the hole needs to be punched. Okay, so it's going to be right there. So to punch this hole, I'm actually going to slide my board in there and use I'm not going to be able to use my punch here. I'm going to have to use a hand punch to do that. Okay, so I'm going to unclip these, stick my board in. I'm just going to stick this in here behind it. So I'm just, again, going through the face fabric. I'm not going through my lining. You see my board is right between the two. Okay, so get your concho. I have several different types here I carry on my website. Just started carrying them. So I don't want to do any of these. I can either do this one or this one. So I'm looking at this one that can either go this way or it can go this way, or I could do this one. I think I'm going to do this one. So just remove this screw off the back. This is just like a big Chicago screw. Stick the back in here. I'm going to put my concho. I'm actually going to take and push these up through this little, see, it's got like a little lip here. I'm going to make sure that the fabric goes around that because it's hollowed out a little bit. So it'll give it a nice, good nice tight fit. I got to cut my holes a little bigger. And the great thing about using this is that you don't have to worry about finishing these edges because they're hidden behind the poncho. So you can just get this at Home Depot, Lowe's, probably dollar store or wherever. And I'm just going to put a little tiny drop right in this hole where the screw goes. And this is just going to ensure that this does not come out. All right, I'm gonna go get my screwdriver so I can get that nice and tight. Okay. So now I'm going to take this over to my cylinder arm machine and I'm going to top stitch the front and the back together, the inside and the outside. And once I do that, I will put my zipper pull on and my zipper end, put my strap on, and we will be completed. Here's the finished bag. Isn't it pretty? I just love it. So without the strap, you know, you would probably carry this more as like a four-arm bag, or how, I'm not sure what they call that. That's a typical way to carry it. I made my shoulder strap a little bit longer, and the measurement I give you in the chart is for the longer strap. So on your body, it would be like this. The Michael Kors says that theirs is 18 to 20 inches. This one ended up being, here I will tell you, because that'll help you determine how long you want to make yours. So with the actual swivel clips, this one is 31 inches. So again, the cutting chart is for this size. If you want it smaller, just make it smaller. Okay. I'm glad I chose this particular poncho. I really like that. I think that really adds it. Adds a nice touch. Of course, we have our nice zipper placket. Beautiful linen lining. Zipper pocket. Slip pocket. As I mentioned before, I'm going to link the Fairhaven video in this down below so that you can go ahead and watch that if you need a refresher on how to actually put any of that lining together. So, if you haven't subscribed yet and you like this video, please do so. Give me a thumbs up. All that really helps me. And until next time, happy sewing.